I don't know about you, but I never really thought about how I think, whether it was critically or in depth or anything like that. And when I got to college, I kept hearing the term critically thinking about something, and it actually took me a little while to learn what that actually meant. And you're going to get a lot of that information through your textbook reading, but I wanted to spend a couple minutes thinking about how we think and actually how that affects us as people. What are the sources of information that we file away in our brains? I love this quote on the internet, because really, Abraham Lincoln didn't exist when the internet did, and you can find anything on the internet, and you really have to figure out what's valid and what's not. And that's just not on the internet. That's just in the media, it's through your friends, it's everything we are exposed to. We get to decide how we want to interpret that information and whether or not it is valid. A lot of it is based on perspective and interpretation, depending on who you are, how you view things, the life experiences that you've had, the way you believe about certain things. All of this comes into how we think. We often get in our own way. Sometimes we just make bad decisions and it gets in our way of thinking properly. Sometimes we drink too much, make a dumb decision, start driving somewhere, right? I mean, these are things that a lot of people will do without thinking about them. So we get in our own way sometimes when we think about thinking. We talked a little bit about emotional intelligence last week and what counts for that. And really, it's about being mature in your own feelings, knowing what you are feeling and responding to those in skillful ways, being able to being able to know those feelings, name those emotions. I'm actually going to print out that list that you guys created last week. It was really great. And just naming those things and also knowing how your body is responding, those physical sensations that are happening, and just really being able to respond to something rather than react to it. Just not being mindless, but to being mindful about your actions, recognizing those assumptions and challenging them. And then also paying attention to those gut feelings when somebody might be violating those values or, hurt someone. So in growing in your in multiple ways about your emotions will help you in this process of thinking critically. I like this idea of stories. We are always making up stories, especially about other people. And, I mean, that's the whole people watching thing, right? I used to go to Disneyland. I went to college very close to Disneyland, and we would just go watch people. And we would make up stories about where they came from or what they were doing or, how they were related or, just it was fun. It was entertaining. But we are also doing that with people all the time. This is why they're responding to me that way, or this is why they're cutting me off, or whatever. Babies, though, if you think about little kids, there's no fear, no limits, all love, all open, no bias, no stereotypes, no anything. And then as we grow, we begin to file information about how we relate to the world around us. And that input comes in through many forms: the people who are around us, the media, the education we receive, and everywhere, whether we go to church, all kinds of stuff. Every belief you have decided if it was true for you somehow, whether it was unconscious or consciously. And you are at the point in your lives right now where you get to decide what you believe. Ditch the shame and blame. Like, it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's, business except for your own, because you are in charge now of what you believe and how you respond to things. Words are powerful. Remember at the beginning of the semester, we chose one word, and that was the word that you were going to be focused on this semester. We're going to revisit those again this week. Words are very powerful, both in thoughts and those that are spoken aloud. The beliefs drive your behavior. What you believe, about yourself and about others drives your behavior. What you think about, you bring about sometimes. I do not think that words go into the universe totally void. Sometimes you kind of think that maybe you think something and then um, the next thing happens and it proves you right, then you see it again and it proves you right again. And you just constantly see those things rather than maybe a completely different perspective would bring about different thoughts. Then also your thoughts become your things. Be careful what you're going to be right about. And when we allow our thinking to go out of control, it will take us places we don't want to go, whether that's depression, anxiety. I think about tests in general, especially math, oh, I'm bad at math. And then you get a test and then you don't do well on the test. And then, so that confirms that you're bad at math. And then you move on to the next thing and you're like, okay, I kind of get this homework, but I'm really bad at math, so I'm just not going to really try. And then you get another test and it confirms you're terrible at math again. And then you get a bad grade in the class and then it's terrible that we just allow it to go out of control and it will go places we don't want to go. Did you know that a positive affirmative thought is 100 times more powerful than a negative one? However, we remember those negative ones much more than those powerful affirmative thoughts. So you start talking to yourself even in an affirmative tone or affirmative thought, and it will be much more powerful than that negative drive. When that belief comes in and you get to decide what you think about it, you are filing that experience. You're getting your story ready about that experience. You have your five senses and you're constantly evaluating your experiences based on your senses. And your brain asks you, what does this mean? It's constantly filing meanings behind all of your experiences. Think about the life situations as we begin to file things away. Think about when you are 3 and you touch a hot plate. Ouch, maybe your mom gets mad, maybe spanks your hand. What do you think about? Think about when you're 6 and you get put into the C reading group. What story do you tell yourself? What about if you're 8 and your dad promised to come to your game and then doesn't make it? What about when you're 10 and if your parents are poor? What's your story? What about 12 years old and you aren't popular and you're seeing maybe some other friends who are? Now you're 15 and no one asks you to the school dance. What stories are being filed away in your head? Now you're 17 and you have a 1.5 grade point average. Now you're 25, maybe you haven't finished college. Now you're 50 and you've never been married. We have this filing system in our head that just files these stories constantly, and we really have to evaluate how we want that to go in, because it may or may not be true, that story that we make up ourselves. Up to 70% may be wrong, even in our own experience, right? It formulates that belief about yourself. I'm thinking about that kid whose dad didn't make it to the baseball game or the soccer game or whatever, and it's like, maybe there was a really valid reason that he couldn't get there. Maybe it was a crappy reason, but you are formulating a story and it may or may not be true. However, that story then formulates a belief about yourself. And when it comes to ourselves, we often file that belief in the most negative place rather than maybe a positive, not excuse, but reason. And then the brain looks for every opportunity to confirm that story. So you really have to be careful what it puts in there. I love this quote by Mark Twain. We also heard it in one of the lectures last week, one of the TED Talks that we heard. And I've been through some terrible things in my life, some of which have actually happened. Because a lot of times our brain just puts in those things. How do we back out of those bad stories? How do we grab hold before it grabs hold of us? You need to back out of them, realize that this is what's going on, and hey, brain, like, why are you thinking about this? This particular instance doesn't make me valuable as a person or any less worthy. Be careful about how you're speaking to yourself and those that you have influence over as well. I know for me, I'm very cautious when I'm in a good place about what comes out of my mouth to my children, or my students, because I really, want to make sure I'm not creating a bad story for them. And then pull out of those stories and ask questions, just, is this really what I believe, and how is this working, or really this is what I think about this? And shift the energy of my words, like from I have to maybe I get to. And you'll find yourself probably enjoying things a lot better, and also putting them in those positive places in your mind. Like, I'm waking up at 4:30 a.m. to go exercise. I have to get up. No, I get to get up. I'm healthy enough. I'm waking up at 4:30. I go to my workout class. I can afford it. It's wonderful. I have a really good time. I get to study tonight because I get to get this education that is so going to be so valuable to me. Think about how that would shift your brain into thinking positively about what you have to get done. That would just be amazing. But how do you do that? How does this actually play out? I'm going to give you 10 tips to adjust your thinking. They're relatively simple, but if you would even adopt one or two of these into your normal everyday life, you would see a huge difference. Listen to your self-talk, those words that you put in there about yourself. Practice an attitude of gratitude. I once heard a quote that depression and gratitude cannot live in the same place. When you're constantly thankful for what you have, for what you're experiencing, for what's going on, those sad feelings cannot hold on with the weight of the world. Pursue happiness. What makes you happy, and go after it. When you know that you're pursuing something that is great, you're going to feel good about that. Seek comfort with change. A lot of our bad thinking comes when change is happening, and try to get comfy with it and just be okay with it. It's really hard sometimes, but valuing relationships is another time. Relationships over tasks. Who are those really important people in your life, and make an effort to connect with them and really just honor that relationship. Tell them how much you love them. Tell them how much you enjoy hanging out with them. Stop shoulding yourself. I should study. I should call my mom. I should save money. That just brings on guilt. Like, why do you need to deal with that? Either do it or don't. Stop shoulding yourself and get rid of the blame game. Start fresh each day. I love this, especially when you're thinking about diets or whatever. It's like, yeah, maybe I had a dessert last night. Doesn't mean I have to do it again today. It's start fresh each day. The sun does, the earth does, why not you? Clarify and prioritize your life. We've been talking a lot about this, especially in our time management section and our value section. But just, clarify, figure out what's most important and spend your time doing those things. Enjoy the moment. If especially once you've clarified and prioritized your life, and if you're doing those things, just when you're in the moment, just enjoy it. Just, this is what's really important to me. I'm so excited to be spending time with whoever this is, or I'm studying and I'm so excited because education is one of my number one things, and here I am doing it. Surround yourself with positive things that make you happy, colors that make you happy, sayings that make you inspired, people that are encouraging, just things that put good vibes around you, and that will help adjust your thinking. Hopefully that little tips and strategies and even just ideas on how we think about ourselves can help you be a more critical thinker.